summing across the two different vowels. The significant main effect means that there was a significant overall difference in movement between voice and voiceless contexts, regardless of the vowel. For F1, 5 speakers had such effects: 4, 6, 7, 8, and 12. And each of them had a greater midpoint to offset change in voice context. So they showed actually a greater degree of deformation in the voice instead of the voices. It's exactly the opposite of what we had expected. Another 5 speakers vowels, 3, 5, 9, 10, and 11, showed no significant main effect and no interaction. So for these, we can conclude that voicing context had no influence on movement for F1, regardless of vowel. The vowels of speaker 1 and 2 had no significant main effect, but a significant interaction. So raising varied the context in one vowel is not in the other. And these are the 2 older speakers who show the traditional pattern of having a stronger glide in the pre-voiceless environment. All the other speakers except 1 and 11 have no significant main effect and no interaction. So for those 9, voicing does not affect F2 movement regardless of the vowel. This is an important finding. For speakers 1 and 11, F2 movement varies by context. Table 11 summarizes the patterns for each speaker. The vowels of all speakers except 11 show greater movement for I than on, in at least one acoustic dimension, and in most cases both. Where voicing has significant conditioning effect, the predominant pattern is for pre-voiced I to show greater movement than pre-voiceless, possibly due to longer duration. This was a surprise based on Eric Thomas's work on I that found longer occupied in pre-voiceless context. And this is also in contrast with the traditional conditioning pattern of I glidation in pre-voice context and diphthongization in pre-voices shown by the older African Americans. Speaker 12 is exceptional in that voicing context has opposite effects on F1 and F2. In Table 12, I just give a list of the previously reported patterns of I glidation in a variety of American conditions so we can situate ourselves before we go into the analysis. Okay, so briefly summarize the results. I was prepared to the reference off, which was expected to show libertine diphthongization. 12 and 13 speakers did show more movement for either F1 or F2, or for both. However, I is clearly gliding, showing much less movement than you would expect for a fully diphthong variant. The older African American speakers showed greater degree of diphthongization by pre-voiceless context, the traditional pattern described in the literature. For the younger speakers, however, as well as for the Appalachian white speakers, for whom voicing had a significant conditioning effect, pre-voice variants show greater diphthongization from midpoint to offset of pre-voicing. Okay. I is a socially salient ethno-linguistic boundary marker, rich in local meaning that indexes affiliation with the South, as well as a boundary for Midwestern whites. We will examine these patterns with reference to 2 important frameworks: dialect leveling and language ideology. And we're on 5. Given the association of pre-voiceless glide-reduced variants of I with white Southern dialects, their apparent absence from Detroit African American English until recently, if we look at some of the Wolfram data for the I vowels, we found virtually no gliding in the pre-voiceless environment. Also considering the large-scale migration of many of the Detroit African Americans from the South and the social ties of Detroit African Americans with white Appalachians who also migrated from the South, it is likely that glide repeating of I in the progressive pre-voiceless context is a result of dialect contact following migration. Phonological leveling is a process which reduces allophonic differentiation and renders vowel systems more similar to each other. Socially marked or minority variants are most susceptible to elimination. This is based on work on our approach. The elimination of the pre-voiceless diphthong allophone of I for the younger and middle-aged Detroit African American speakers is a case of allophonic leveling. The leveling of the diphthong variant in this sacred pre-voiceless context is ideologically mediated. Language ideologies are socially positioned beliefs about a language and its relationship with society and culture. Language ideologies are manifested not only as reactions and attitudes to linguistic varieties and features, but also in patterns of use. These ideologies can change over shift in and out of stabilities. Since a change in language ideology can yield a change in use, ideology shapes the direction of change. This approach contrasts with that in which change in vowel systems results primarily from internal factors operating in a manner that is, for the most part, independent of the cultural orientations of individual speakers. Use of the Southern live reading variant of I is socially salient both inside and outside the South. President his associates have shown us that. One of those linguistic practices more likely to be talked about than others in metapragmatic commentary. People notice this vowel. I can certainly attest to that myself after living in Michigan for 4 years. Phillips 2000 describes a crucial site as a culturally defined area in which powerful ideological work is being done. A notion that I argue extends to the vowel space and vowel changes. The work in this context includes the marking of ethno-linguistic boundaries and the declaration of cultural affiliations. Linguistic features that are socially stable and show consistent patterns of differentiation between groups as well as between individuals constitute crucial sites for the expression of such ideologies and differences that matter in this approach. The nature of language ideologies cannot be determined simply by correlating linguistic features with social features determined by the researcher. Analysis of linguistic variation in this framework requires that one attempt to identify the social categories that are most relevant to the participants. These categories may or may not mirror the conventional triumvirate of race, class, and gender. Demographic and ethnographic evidence, I don't have time to go into it here, but I discussed it in my 2003 dissertation, suggests that the relevant social opposition for contemporary Detroit African Americans is with Midwestern white people, not these Appalachian white Southern migrants. During the 2 years of participant observation I did in Milwaukee, I witnessed a general orientation to Southern culture in Detroit for all my Southern migrant participants. For example, all participants reported their families' pre-migration places of origin in the South, and many migrants, as well as Detroit-born descendants of migrants, so people who were actually born in Detroit, describe themselves and the culture of Detroit as Southern. Participants often describe neighborly visits, barbecues, pig pickings, and other quintessential Southern activities as evidence of Southernness. Another thing that I saw that really surprised me was I found several participants who had built porches onto the front of their houses. So the first thing they did when they bought a house was actually build a front porch instead of having just a deck in the back. And people talked about this. The Detroit African American and Appalachian white participants frequently expressed a strong cultural loyalty to the South in their communities. Several participants planned to move back south. Others expressed a desire to move back south and said they couldn't because they didn't want to leave behind family in Detroit. And there was a lot of traveling back and forth between Detroit and the South. It makes sense that a stereotypical marker of Southern speech would be a crucial site for the expression of important local language ideologies, such as this cultural religion.